Starting all over again, saying hello to friends.
I think we should get rid of ICE. We should separate out two missions and do the anti-terrorism mission, the national security mission, and then on the other side, make sure you're doing, looking at immigration as a humanitarian issue.
The president's deeply immoral actions have made it obvious we need to rebuild our immigration system from top to bottom, starting by replacing ICE with something that reflects our morality and.
You are listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. The Democrats have clearly bitten off more than they can chew, and many of them see that the disaster in this Ocasio-Cortez and others who have set their sights on ICE, the immigration customs enforcement officers who do such a great job for our country, the protests in Portland, all of it. And this is not over. The demonization of government officials carrying out their duties is something that's real and frankly puts their lives in danger. Joining us now is Senator Bill. He has some interesting ideas on this assault on our law enforcement, and we thought we'd check in with him and see how he was doing. Senator, how are you?
Hey, Laura, thank you for having me. I agree with you entirely. This lack of protection for federal officials by state and local endangers their life as well as endangers their mission. You put it perfectly.
Well, Senator, here's the deal. The Democrats, I think, see that this is a loser for them politically. Only 25% of Democrats want to abolish ICE, according to the the surveys out there. You have people like Kirsten Gillibrand and Elizabeth Warren, both who are 2020, likely candidates. Both of them giving support to Ocasio-Cortez.
Well, I wish that they would give support to the folks who are protected. I'm looking at some statistics. In 2017, ICE arrested about 130,000 criminals responsible for more than 76,000 drug offenses, 48,000 assault offenses, 11,000 weapon offenses, 5,000 sexual assaults, 2,000 kidnappings, 1,800 homicides, seized 2,400 pounds of fentanyl, about 4 tons of heroin, et cetera, and somehow these are the bad folks. And as you know, I've introduced a resolution calling for the mayor of Portland to resign. This is another example of what you said, truly of those who are attempting to protect us.
Yeah, I think that Americans have to imagine their life and their world without these men and women who are willing to put it on the line for us. Imagine how much more difficult things would be. I mean, it's already hard in major metropolitan areas with an influx of illegal immigrants, gang members. You've seen the story in Philadelphia where a man who was not detained by state authorities because of the amnesty policies went on to rape a little girl, and stories like this keep popping up in the media because they can't hide the facts. You got states that are adding to this trouble by not allowing immigration officials into their jails to interview people, like California. They won't let them in, correct, Senator?
They will not let them in. But let's even go to a more fundamental principle, Laura. The idea that we all have equal protection under the law, when what happens in Portland, where there's a gang surrounding the office with the ICE members, with the ICE officials and law enforcement agents within, and they can't get out because of the gang following, reportedly throwing feces at the building. When the landlord comes to check on it, threatening the landlord with a needle they say is infected with AIDS, following the ICE people to their daughter's practice, presumably to create a sense of threat. All not equal protection under the law. Let's just go to the basics. We're not a banana republic. It should be that all Americans, I would say particularly our federal law enforcement, should be protected, but somehow they're selectively protecting.
Well, and I think, again, the American people are, seeing the truth. of what really is motivating the Democrats. There are no solutions. They're not interested. When they say they're interested in border enforcement, they're interested in the rule of law. No, they're not. If they were, this would be the last issue they focused on. They would say, look, whatever we can do to make it easier to get these criminals out of the country, let's help you. But instead, it's resist, resist, resist. And I think it's a loser position for them politically on top of all the other problems it creates. I don't think it's a winner at all. I think it's a fringe anti-ICE movement. And I think your resolution is well conceived and well timed given the public fury over all of this. I want to move on and talk about the John McCain death. Senator Cassidy, I knew you obviously knew Senator McCain, your colleague. Any thoughts on his life, his contribution to the Senate debate?
John McCain was a great American, and he came to Louisiana to campaign with me when I was running to get elected in 2016 or 14, and we went to Shreveport. And we're going around, we're just hitting a schedule. We're just going out through the state. New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Lafayette, up to Shreveport, back to New Orleans. And he's in his late 70s, doesn't bother him a bit. A veteran handed him, will you call my friend, a fellow Vietnam vet in the hospital? We get in the car as we transition to the next location. He calls up the vet and he says, friend, this is John McCain, and I'm standing with you. And I thought the guy was so committed to his fellow vets, and particularly, I suppose, his fellow Vietnam vets. Even his downtime between events, he was calling to connect with them. He obviously had some faults. He would admit it. But in his concern for fellow Americans, I applaud him.
Well, I couldn't say it better. I mean, he and the president obviously had a pretty terrible relationship, and a lot of, I think, media types are using that point to criticize Trump and using even his funeral and his final statement to smash Trump. Your thoughts about that?
Well, folks may say the president's not being very gracious. Well, then I would ask those folks to focus more on him as well. The story should be John McCain, the great life he lived, flaws and all, because no one's saying that he was without flaws, not least of which John McCain, but just that he dedicated his life to, among other things, his family, his faith, but also to our country. And I just prefer to focus on that.
I think that's a great way of looking at it. Senator, you've had some interesting comments about the president and NAFTA, and you were concerned about the NAFTA renegotiation. Now we have a very specific framework. I had the exclusive with the Mexican foreign minister on my show this morning, and it looks like this. I mean, from the details that are out, it looks like this is a huge win for the American workers. Your thoughts on what you're hearing so far?
Yeah, I just returned from a visit there, met with Mexican officials to discuss how we can improve. It was clear we were making tremendous progress. They acknowledged that there would have to be periodic reviews. They were okay with that. Mm-hmm. They didn't want a sunset clause, as the president wished, fearing that businesses would not have the certainty to invest. Mm-hmm. I kind of agree. In fact, I absolutely agree with that. On the other hand, they also conceded that the president has that every now and then you have to reevaluate. I think we're in a really good place. I think the real emphasis should be China, and I think we've now set ourselves up to focus on China.
Well, and I think this is going to – there's even a piece, I think it's in Wall Street Journal or New York Times today, that China's really really good pressure being put on China now because of this, because they've been sneaking all those auto parts Mexico and making all this money on the auto parts, which then build the significant percentage of cars in Mexico, which then get sent to the U.S. without any tariffs. So China has been able to obviate any concern about tariffs, and now that's out the window. And so it's an additional pressure point put on China by this deal. And the Canadian economic minister in town today, I think it's pretty likely that they're going to end up signing on to something, because you don't want to be odd man out when it comes to the United States. Senator Cassidy, thank you so much for your work on this protection of ICE and ICE officers. We'll follow up with you. We really appreciate it. Who are you, by the way? Where'd you go to school? Who's your football team? I'm excited about college football. So
I'm excited about college football too. I'm an LSU Tiger.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew it. You're LSU. The game isn't okay. So I'm a Bama fan, even though I didn't go to Bama. So the game is in Bama this year, correct? Am I getting that right, or is it in LSU?
The game's at LSU.
Oh, okay. I've lost a year somewhere in my scheduling. Okay, so I might have to come back to Baton Rouge for the game. I'm not sure. I might make it back to that game this year, but if you're there, we have to hang out. Okay.
Laura, I got some tickets. If you want to go, I'll sit away. My wife's from Mobile. She's a big Bama fan.
Oh, I'm gonna hang with her then. Forget you. I'm gonna sit with her. That LSU crowd is rough when the Bama comes into town, though. That's a rough crowd.
Now, what I always tell folks, what do you call a woman from Alabama who marries a guy from Louisiana? You pause for a second, then you say she's clearly a social climber. And so...
Oh my gosh! Well, the fact that you guys lost Saban as your coach, don't hold that against us, okay? Don't hate us because we're beautiful in Alabama, okay? Don't listen to me. I went to Dartmouth, okay, and I'm like an Alabama fan, so people ridicule me all the time. Senator, hopefully we'll see you at the game, but we'll have you on soon. Thank you so much. We'll take a break. 855-40